Come on in to Margaret McSweeney's Kitchen for Kitchen Chat, where every week you'll meet chefs, cookbook authors, foodies, gourmets, and just plain people who love to eat. And along with laughter, chat, recipes, and stories about food, you'll sometimes also hear words of inspiration, love, and hope. As Margaret always says, Kitchen Chat is food for the senses and food for the soul. So grab a cup of coffee, put your feet up on a comfy chair, and get ready to spend a little time with Margaret and her friends.
Hello, dear foodie friends, and welcome to Kitchen Chat. I'm your host, Margaret McSweeney, and I'm so excited that you're joining us here in the beautiful and award-winning Viking and La Cornue showroom in the Merchandise Mart. I'm here with my co-host, Chef Jamie Larita, who is the designer, the brand ambassador, a TV host of TLC Make This Place Your Home.
That's right.
And a fabulous friend. And we are beyond thrilled to introduce you to someone very special, and we just enjoyed an incredible lunch here. Chef Diana Davila, who is the executive chef and owner of Mitacaya Antonquerias. And welcome to Kitchen Chat.
Thank you for having me. It's a lot of fun.
Oh, and what a special meal we enjoy today, Jamie.
She killed it here in our showroom. Actually, you were the opening chef for the Viking La Cornue showroom when we opened last year.
Yeah, it was awesome. I remember me and my crew were just this was like a candy land to us. We're the first ones to use it.
Yes. And you used the Turbo Chef oven. And I remember you made meatballs.
Yes.
And what were in those meatballs? So
it was a take on a traditional dish called chiles en nogada, but we made it into an albóndiga meatball dish. So it had onions, garlic, apples, chile, and raisins, which is all of the beautiful stuffing of what chile poblanos known as.
And we served thousands of people that night. Yes. I remember you being really impressed with the speed of the Turbo Chef.
Yeah, I was like, oh, okay, this is great. This is simple. I think that somebody else who was here, they're like, I don't know, I haven't used it yet. And it ended up being super simple, life-saving. So, because I tend to put a lot of garnishes on plates when it's little events like that. And so just counting on something, just opening it up, and it's perfect. It was really
nice. I feel like we were blessed to have you as our opening chef. And then here today for our designer lunch and learn, you really just slayed it. And I love the fact that all of the dishes, a lot of chefs, use ingredients that are from the season. Today was like falling leaves all over your plates.
Yes.
Yes.
You're such an emotional chef. I love the way you're so tied into the season.
And it was great. You have such a discerning palate, and you were oohing and awing. It was like the fireworks from the kitchen. It was just incredible and delicious.
You're welcome.
I am really emotional, and I think that that's one of the things that with dishes, when I'm pretty much recreating it, it's not recreating something. I'm one of those fundamental believers that you can't recreate things if you don't understand what its foundation is. And so and things for, there's classic combinations, of course, but however, when you put a feeling or an emotion or a time in a place that you are it's transcendent. It becomes energy in motion. And, I think that's
my language.
That's how I look at
speaking my language.
My food, really.
And I love the reasoning behind the name, and I will try to get it right this time, of your restaurant, Mitacaya Antonquerias.
Almost. Hey.
Yes.
But that was good.
But if you can explain to the listeners and viewers, what does that mean?
There's about 3 reasons why I named this. In its most logistic format, Antoqueria literally means my namesake. So my name is Diana, and I'm thinking about a name this is my first and only restaurant, and I wanted it to be personal, but I didn't want to name it Diana's, or I didn't want to have ownership over. I wanted her to have her own spirit. So I'm well, if we have the same name, well, then that makes her mi tocaya. So then I don't own her. She's her own person. So that's why I called it Mi Tocaya, because she's my namesake. She holds the same name. That's one. This is how like in depth I get to things sometimes. It's so ridiculous. And then other time I was like thinking about, about how, I've been working in this industry for a long time, since I was a teenager, and it is long hours. You do give up so much of just that kind of everyday celebrations that you're not able to. So, and then here, like, and I always, the way, I'm a chef, I'm a mother, I'm a daughter, I'm a wife, like, in no particular order, all these things make me up. So I figured, like, here was a place where instead of working for somebody else, I got to be the kind of Wonder Woman where I got to put everything together. Be like, I could do everything. It's like Beyonce's Sasha Fierce. So it's like Mi Tocaya is like my performing, like where I got to wear all those hats and like, braids and lipstick.
We just bonded on many levels. I know that there are people snickering in the background because I call myself Sasha Fierce as well.
Really? There you go.
I do. I know what that means.
And I have the last reason, which I think is really special, is because Mi Tocayo is the male version. Tocaya is the feminine way of saying it. So anytime I'm quite the feminist, and anytime that any woman says, oh, let's go to Mi Tocaya, it bears her name as well. So it's like a universal thing for every woman. They say Mi Tocaya. So I feel like there's layers, just like cooking,
Yeah, amazing.
Yes.
Amazing. And on top of all of this, what I'm so impressed by, Food and Wine this year has just named you one of the best chefs in America. This is huge.
Yeah, that's been crazy.
Yes.
It's still kind of like, of course, I've hoarded like 10 magazines. I still look at it every day, and I'm just like, wow, that really did happen. Like, that's pretty crazy. Yeah.
Wow.
Well, your food is so, I hate to call it simple because it isn't, but it's got so many layers and there's so much depth. And just tasting the mole and the sauces that you make, there's so many, like I love the way you were explaining how many nuts and seeds and vegetables go into the dish and how you just make it all seem so effortless and smooth and not overly seasoned. There's a simplicity to your food, and then there's a great depth to it. I could tell you're really putting a lot of yourself and your soul into your food.
Yeah, I feel like it's like one of those things where I'm constantly telling new cooks, or just in general, like, yes, I've been cooking for a long time, but there's when you don't know anything and you're just interacting and you're looking at food as recipes and putting something together. And then there's you start recognizing certain techniques. And then you start looking at recipes and you start breaking them down into ratios about like understanding bases and acids and how individual ingredients, what their compound is. And then from there, like, that's where, like, now I always say that I look at myself as a bruja, because you have all these live ingredients and you're constantly like, they're all live ingredients, and it's by smell, by touch, looking, like you're not always going to get the same tomatoes.
So Margaret, do you know what a bruja is?
Is that like a witch doctor thing?
Yes. I was actually going to say before, that's what we are, right? And when you understand how to spin the pot like you do, it evokes such a feeling. It's almost like when I was eating your food, and I never sit down. I got to sit down for once in my life today, and you put people under a spell. I mean, and that's, and you do. And when you're under someone's spell and it's done with the love and gratitude for an appreciation of ingredients like that, it takes you somewhere. And where is that journey? Tell me where you want to take people.
I think that it's always, I feel like there's a couple things that I always think about. Like, for some reason, since the moment that I had, like, where I wanted to be a chef, it came to me in like such a beautiful manner when I was making food for like the line cooks at my parents' taquerias, like when I was a teenager. And all of a sudden I just kind of like remember all of my five senses being, everything was quiet and silent. And that's when I was like, oh, I want to be a chef. It's a sensual thing where you have to use your senses in doing it. It's storytelling. I've always loved going to restaurants. I mean, I feel like it's this awesome orchestra of there's so many live elements, think about just the cast itself, like all these people from different backgrounds, from different economic backgrounds, different cultural backgrounds, different, all in the same place, putting on the same show, trying to put on the same show. Then you have like the bones and the structure and the textures and like the smells. And so I've always been obsessed with that. And I've always drawn inspiration through feelings and how a place or how someone makes me feel. And I've always had such a loving relationship with my family and travels. I would spend all my summers in Mexico, and I didn't know until later that it was a love affair, that like later on I would, have another moment as a chef being like, I only want to cook Mexican food. So, like now we're going steady.
Yeah, and that's where I was hoping you would go, because to me it's a love affair. Like, you talk about these ingredients so passionately, and for me as a chef, my end result is always about giving, and I always want people to feel great.
Yeah.
When it's a way for me to express myself, and you're doing it in such a harmonious way with all these different ingredients. There's a lot of layers to your food, but yet they all seem to go down this one very smooth road.
And
you have to have patience.
Yes. And I am not a chef, as you know, but as a diner, I mean, what an experience. The journey with that first dish, and I'm going to have pictures, I promise. That was incredible. First of all, it was a fried oyster taco, and I can't remember the exact name of that. And
the salsa was a salsa veracruzana.
Yes.
So taking all the traditional flavors of a very much loved sauce called salsa veracruzana, but making it in a different technique, and then on a squidding tortilla.
Yes.
I've always loved putting
Squidding
I know. That was incredible. It was like you took me on a journey, on a coastal journey.
Well, it's like an ocean,
Yes.
Everything is on like, a lot of proteins that we eat are, for some reason, it resonates with me. Give them a piece of home when we consume them, right? Like, so like it makes sense. It's like a piece of the ocean.
Yeah, but it's like that. You have a dish like that. One, as a chef, you have these taste memories. That's a dish that you remember. That's a dish that you want to go back for. That's a dish that you want to talk about. Mm-hmm. We had several of those dishes today. Can you tell us just really briefly about, you mentioned your family, and you mentioned growing up restaurant. Any defining moments that you can remember as a child? I remember for myself, it was like, I have 11 brothers and sisters.
Oh, wow.
So my mom, when I would come home from school, there was always potatoes that had to be peeled and carrots that had to be peeled. So I was like the king peeler in my family. Any moments of you, like as a child, though, teaching how to make tortilla? What was the thing that came from an ancestor, a grandfather, a grandmother, an uncle, or whomever? Was there a family member that really inspired you?
Yeah, I would say that it's a combination of my mother, my aunt, which is her sister, and my grandmother, their mother. When I would spend summers in Mexico, my grandmother died when I was probably about in 4th grade. However, I still feel like if I was an adult at that time when she died, which is crazy. But
She's an old soul.
I remember going to the market with her. Nobody would want to go. I was the only one that would want to go. I'm like, are you kidding me? The market's the funnest. Like, that's where all the action's happening. And then same thing with my aunt as well. Like, once my grandmother died, she pretty much became the matriarch of the family. And then my mother's just always loved to, well, they both have always loved to cook new things and travel. So I think that it's been just wanting to help. Yes. I loved being in the kitchen, in the market, and just overall socializing with people. Mm-hmm. So I feel like I've always, they would let me do things like, shredding meat, like if we had moliendo chiles, which is pasting chiles, cleaning onions. Actually, they wouldn't let me do knife work. It's more like the tedious things that normally it takes them a long time that you could give to me to do. Right, exactly, yeah. Things like that. We do flour tortillas at the restaurant. And I feel like my grandmother, my mother's mother was from Chihuahua, which is a northern state in Mexico. And I think there's always, I feel like there's so much ignorance surrounding Mexican food and, not just even within Mexicans themselves. It's a huge country. Not a lot of people have had the ability to like travel or to see, and every single town does things so differently that it's incredible. And flour tortillas, for some reason in this country, always people think like, oh, well, that's not authentic, whatever that means, or that's not like, it's like, really? Because my grandmother was straight up from the ranch and like did flour tortillas and was known in the whole town, like making this, like different states, different towns are known for certain things. And I think that when you generalize a cuisine, sometimes, you shut yourself up from understanding. It's like, could you imagine, like, look at the difference between barbecue in Chicago and barbecue in Tennessee,
Yes.
or in Tennessee, Texas. Like, it's like there's such miles away, like literally, like geographically, and also thought process, like when you're smoking something, when you're barbecuing. So like the same thing applies in Mexican cuisine. It's really, really full of depth, complexity, depending on where geographically you're located, what indigenous groups had lived there, what the Spaniards or French or, or American at that point. So like, to me, that's why another reason why I like food so much. It's because it's like the study of history and people and like collectively constantly progressing into something.
Yes, and I love too, and I've not seen this, the flowers that you placed on. Can you share with the foodie friends just the special meaning behind placing the flowers?
Well, there's a lot of flowers. I actually have like some great cookbooks of Mexican food with flowers, because it's part of the season. It's the circle of life in general, like you have a seed, it sprouts, it starts growing, you start growing, the seed keeps developing, you have roots, you have leaves, and then you have fruits, and then you have flowers, and through the flowers, and then after the flowers, you have this sort of lovemaking, for lack of a better way of putting it. And then that's where like just things continue to grow. But like during that time, like in the peaks of summer, and later in fall, when you have squash blossoms, when you have all these vegetables coming to flower, you really get to, there's so many things that you could do with them, and in Mexican cuisine, there's lots of different herbal remedies, botanicas, there's lots of different recipes that are super old that people have been muddling, that people have been using, almost as a perfume factor in food sometimes. It's really interesting. So like, I always love flowers. And then plus it's part of our culture where like, I'm actually not wearing any, but normally I like to wear flowers in my hair as well. And I feel like there's just something really, algo muy llamativo, something very attractive about obviously flowers. I mean, they're beautiful. It's like you're luring something to you, right? Through
okay.
We're best friends. She doesn't know yet.
You two are two peas in a pot.
True. I mean, I love, like, even in my herb boxes at home, and flowers are the most beautiful. When you're growing dill, the flowers, these beautiful fans come up. They're my favorite, right?
So gorgeous.
They're so beautiful. And then you take little pieces of them and you garnish your plates with them. And there's so much energy that comes from that. And there's so much love right there.
Spent so much time
I know.
just to get that flower.
Someone understands.
Absolutely. You two are fond. And speaking of garnishing, I'll make sure we have a photo of this too. You garnished the chandelier today.
It's funny. I love how that happened because it was as if it was supposed to happen. And that's the great thing about cooking. And felt the need to go out and dress the chandelier.
There was chiles in there.
Yes. Right. But
I forgot, but like I was going to put some in my hair, but
it was this moment where I felt driven to do that. And then your main dish, without even communicating with you, looked like it fell right off of the chandelier. Your restaurant, tell me about the restaurant. What made this restaurant happen? Where is it? Tell everyone out there where to go to experience this magic.
So, Mi Tocaya Antojeria, we're at 2800 West Logan Boulevard, just a little corner on Logan Boulevard and California. It's small, open kitchen, And it really came about out of a lack of opportunity, to tell you the truth. I've been working in this industry for a long time, and I've seen I've gotten a lot of amazing support. And also, I think that the last project I did, I pretty much felt like a complete failure when I felt the need to walk away. And it felt like a very public, like if it was like a public breakup. I'm like, oh no, like, you're never going to work in this town again. And then I'm like, picked myself up and I'm like, all right, well, let's see what's out there. I only want to cook Mexican food. And, I come from a family who had taquerias growing up, and it's hard, like owning your own business. I didn't know if I wanted to take that underlining. I was like, oh, I could contribute as a group, and like build upon that. But I really wasn't feeling like any of the opportunities that were out there. I felt very used, not necessarily respected for my vision or what I could do or what I wanted to do artistically and creatively. And so I think through the support of a lot of entrepreneurs and chefs, and they're like, well, why don't you just do it? And I felt like pretty much a lot of people had kind of carried me through that process, and it took all but a year, and things just randomly came into place. So that's where the name, the style of restaurant that we are, being an antojeria, food that you crave, food that you long for. It's like nostalgic, shareable dishes from your childhood. And I knew I wanted it to be an open place where I would be able to see the whole dining room, where very much is like an open kitchen, and share, I think, a lot of the facets that I don't think people really know a lot about Mexican food. I get that all the time. I've read and studied and tasted and traveled a lot, and I just feel I wanted to share what it's like to grow up with eating these sorts of childhood flavors, or travel, or also just be obsessed with a certain cuisine. And the last thing is always about being a woman. I feel like a lot of times, you always remember your mother, your grandmother, your aunt, cooking in a lot of these scenarios. And especially in Mexican cuisine, like 95% of the women still cook are the ones that are cooking today. And when you take a look around of Mexican chefs, all these male chefs, like, I don't know if they necessarily even honor the traditions or ask, how do you make this? I feel like it's giving respect and paying homage to all of my ancestors who are women, to being like, I'm open, let's work through each other.
And it's the ultimate honor to these home chefs, truly, who cultivated your talent.
Yeah. Mi Tocaya is really where I get to put together the professional cook in me and the home cook in me. It's a collaborative effort. And just in the restaurant, we always call our group that we're a gang, Mi Tocaya gang. Our crew is like very diverse. We have people from Costa Rica, Guatemala, Ecuador, Puerto Rico, all over. And it's amazing. I mean, we all did get conquistador from the same people, right? So there's so many similarities in many ways. And you're like, I remember, this reminds me of this dish, or this reminds me of that dish. So I feel like we're always constantly kind of surrounded with this kind of spirit of our past, and it ends up giving us more of a present feeling, because sometimes you forget how powerful everything that makes you when you're standing up now is always leading up to something. Yes. Right? So I feel like that's why we're like, oh, we're the Mi Tocaya gang, because we have now taken that and this is who we are. This is what we want to share. This is what we want to continue to do.
Wow. And I'm just speechless. I mean, it is just incredible, your story and just experiencing the yes, absolutely.
It's fun,
the passion and the collaboration and everything that, I've only known you through the showroom and meeting you here. But I can tell, you remind me of everything that I would love to be able to do, to have a restaurant at that level, and to really be able to
There's a lot of work.
Yeah, and
Yes.
especially when you have
And as
this
a
sort of a
mom.
soul, because it's easy. It's easy to get lost in the passion, and you have children, and you have a family, and you have this restaurant.
Employees, people's livelihoods.
Exactly,
Yeah.
exactly. So we know that the restaurant is great. Your food is great. Everything you say that comes out of your mouth is great. What's going to happen in the future for you? I feel like you should have. You need your own. Like you need to teach people. You need to show people. How are you going to do this?
There's a couple things that I have in the workings, like I have in the works. I'm going to be writing a cookbook, which I'm super excited about. And I have a dream of a molino that's very in the preliminary stage right now as well. And then I also have what we have, the Food and Wine magazine. Really, there's such a great network and such a great family, and they have really opened up a lot of doors. And in that, we're going to be doing a super independent cooking show.
Wow.
That revolves around, in the restaurant, revolves around showing always a dish. However, my favorite thing about entertaining is always that, like, I feel like a lot of times people always have this undertaking of, like, I have to do everything myself. Like, not only do you have to, like, put yourself together, your family together, you have to clean your house, you have to do a menu, you have to, like, it's like, where's the sense of community? So then what? The guests show up and they just get pampered? What? I'm like, that's never been the case with my family, like, feel like it's, sometimes that may make people not like and feel stressful about that. It's about everybody putting in to the pot, So it's like, I'll make 2 dishes. My mom will bring in the finger food, aunt will bring. So, and at the restaurant, our motto is todos ponen, everybody puts in. So if we all put into the pot and we all feed from the pot, well, then it's going to be an amazing dinner. So it's a dream of ours, and we're going to start. We've already started filming.
That's amazing. I can't wait to see that.
Yeah, it's going to be a lot of fun.
And I always like to ask our guests, like, if there's somebody watching, somebody that wants to get into the restaurant business, somebody that's sitting there thinking, oh, like they were you at one point and me, God, I really want to do that. What's the one thing they need to have? Like the one thing, if you're watching this show and you're there and you're listening, what, from a professional chef, somebody that's living their life as a professional chef, what's the one thing you really need?
I'd say that an uncontrollable desire to want to create and to be a part of an experience.
Great.
One thing I always love to do before ending the show is to have 3 tips for the home chef.
What's something easy I can make at home? Like something Mexican easy. And I'm just like, Mexican food is not easy. A lot, like whether you're making tamales or you're making gorditas or you're making sopes or you're making chochoyotes or you're making tostadas, or like there's either a lot of knife work or there's a lot of time that you need. Like, so I think that if you want to make Mexican food, you're going to have to commit, but lead with a feeling. Lead with a feeling and commit to one thing. You don't have to make some sort of just one thing, make a guisado, make pozole, make it a thing where you're actually going to, this is what I'm going to do today. Another tip, I would say, have patience. Having patience is of the utmost importance when you're making, especially Mexican food, I would say, just because you need to kind of take your time, let things develop. You're nursing what you're making in the pot. So whether if you have 5 ingredients, take your time to cut those vegetables, right? Take your time because it showcases and it's honoring all your ingredients. So I would say have patience, have patience and make sure that it's a collaborative effort. If you do things by yourself, nobody really does anything by themselves, nobody does things by themselves. Like you have to, be reasonable about what you can do and what you can't, and ask for help. Put your children to have them
peel those potatoes,
peel those potatoes,
peel those carrots.
Exactly.
Number 8. I'm number 8.
And what is the word for all in?
Todos ponen.
Wow. Thank you so much.
It's been great. What a great
Kitchen Chat.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness, this was great. And thank you, dear foodie friends. Make sure, if you're in Chicago, to go to Mitakaya Antacahias.
Almost Antonia. Yes.
And meet Chef Diana and taste her food. Also, come visit Chef Jamie Larita in the beautiful Viking and La Cornue showroom, the Merchandise Smart, Suite 137. Visit thevikinglife.com. And also come visit me in my kitchen, kitchenchat.info. And always remember to take a moment and savor the day.
Thanks for joining Margaret for Kitchen Chat today. Margaret would be so excited for you to drop by and visit with her at kitchenchat.info, where you'll enjoy podcasts, blogs, recipes, tips from chefs, and even great giveaways. She invites you to share your recipes and kitchen stories too. As Margaret always says, savor the day. Podcasts, blogs, recipes, tips from chefs, and even great giveaways. She invites you to share your recipes and kitchen stories too. As Margaret always says, savor the day.